Hello, hello. Happy Tuesday. Happy Taco Tuesday. Welcome back to the 2021 Impact Series. Looks like we have a little bit of trouble streaming to Facebook. Hopefully, we will get that resolved here shortly. But in the meantime, uh, thank you guys so much who are viewing with us on YouTube. And we hope to have that up on Facebook here very shortly. If you're new here or if you're returning, welcome back. And if you are new here, this is the Impact Series that we do at the end of the year, which is a time for reflection, celebration, and envisioning what is to come in 2022. And we're doing it a little bit differently tonight. We have some special guests that I'll bring up here in a minute, but we are so excited to be tackling some topics surrounding our partner organization, the Circuit Trails, and equity and inclusion along the East Coast Greenway. So don't be afraid. We know we're having some problems here now, but we're super excited to see you guys drop some comments, questions, experiences along the Greenway here in the chat with us for our two guests, Daniel Paschall and Eleanor Horne. Daniel, Eleanor, how are you guys doing today?
Fine, thank you, Angela.
Really good. Thanks so much.
Sounds good. So these may be familiar faces to you guys because Daniel, he is our Mid-Atlantic Manager here at the East Coast Greenway Alliance, and Eleanor Horne is an advisory board member with the East Coast Greenway Alliance as well. And if that role isn't keeping her busy enough, she is the co-president for a trailway along the Circuit Trails that we are excited to talk about today and dive deeper into what is all this going on with the Lawrence Hopewell Trail and the network of trails that's in the Circuit Trails network along with the East Coast Greenway, and dive into some of the work that they've been doing, not just in trail access, but in making sure that trails are equitable for everyone. So for you guys, Daniel and Eleanor, for those who may not be familiar with the Circuit Trails in the Philadelphia area, could you please just tell us a little bit more about them and how the work that they're doing in Philadelphia and surrounding areas?
Sure, I can jump in. Eleanor, help me out. What I missed?
Sure.
So the Circuit Trails is a 800 plus mile trail network in development. So we're hoping to complete that, whole network. But right now our goal is 500 miles by 2025. And these are multi-use trails. That means walking and biking, and a network that extends out from Philadelphia into both Pennsylvania and New Jersey and the surrounding counties. So it has a 9-county footprint. And it's all about creating access for people to walk and to bike, use scooters, use a wheelchair, push strollers, get to where they're going, but also, to find places of respite in nature, to connect with waterways, to basically help them lead a more fulfilling life. Anything I missed there?
I think of the Circuit Trails as more than interconnected trails that you can look at a map. I think of it as an incredible idea about connecting people and communities and providing access to the majesty of the outdoors. I like to think of Circuit Trails as an expander of possibilities. Now, most of us ride our bikes around the block or on a local trail, but Circuit Trails expand that notion. Imagine this. You can get on our trail, the Lawrence Hopewell Trail, which is in central New Jersey, and connect to the DNR Canal, which links to the East Coast Greenway. And from there, the possibilities are endless. You can ride north to Maine and south to Florida. You can travel west and one day connect to the Appalachian Trail, and hundreds of stops in between. So if that doesn't expand your imagination, I don't know what does. It's more than the trail network you see on the map. It is an expander of possibilities.
I love that.
All right, we got some poetic justice tales here about the Circuit Trails. So if you're not familiar, now you are familiar. Thank you guys so much for telling us a little bit about that organization and the work that they're doing here. So I want to speak specifically to our subject for tonight, and that's equity. So to increase equity and access to the trails for everyone, Circuit Trails formed the JEDI Task Force, appropriately named. Can you break down that acronym and speak to the inclusionary trail planning toolkit that they developed?
Well, JEDI stands for Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. And while the concepts are nuanced, to us it means that our trails will be open, accessible, and to be enjoyed by everyone, regardless of race, ethnicity, age, income, gender, or physical ability. You know, there are no gates or chains blocking access to circuit trails, but that doesn't mean that everyone um, understands that they are welcome. Even if they know it intellectually, that there are not physical barriers to circuit trails, they may not feel that our trails are for them, that they are truly welcomed. So many of us who work on trails are finding it necessary to sort of develop programs to increase access to our trails and basically to retrofit trails that were not truly designed for everyone so that they could be more equitable, could support more diversity and more inclusion. So we're retrofitting our trails to appeal to a broader audience. But with the Inclusionary Trails Planning Toolkit, we're encouraging trail managers and trail advocates to consider issues of equity, diversity, and inclusion from the very beginning when the idea for a trail is born. Issues of where to place the trail, even the surface, the amenities, safety features, all of those elements that we previously thought were free of bias really are not. And what we have found that is that if we build better trails, when we develop trails that appeal, we build better trails when we develop trails that appeal to diverse groups of people, we actually build better trails. And building better trails is not only the goal of circuit trails, but it's the goal of everyone that I've met who's in the trail building business. So if you start from the beginning, it's a lot easier to consider issues of equity, diversity, and inclusion.
Absolutely. And I think one of the phrases that comes up a lot in the trail building world and many different types of infrastructure worlds is build it and they will come. And we found that if you if you build it and they will come, and if you build it as we have in a number of communities, not everyone is coming and not everyone feels welcome. So really we're trying to get to more learn together, plan together, build it together, celebrate it together, program it together, and then everybody will be out there together. Easier said than done, but it changes the philosophy of doing something for someone instead of doing it together collaboratively. I think that's the heart of a lot of this work.
And those of us who love trails think that everyone views a trail in the same way that we do, that they want the same things from their trails experience. But what we found was that that was not the case. Soon after we created the JEDI Task Force, the members of the task force, every one of us, is deeply committed to the idea of diversity and inclusion along our trails, along the circuit trails. But we became aware that many people who live near a circuit trail, especially in under-resourced communities, are not making use of those trails. Now, we had a lot of ideas about why that was the case, but we had no data. And so with funding from the William Penn Foundation, and I sort of think of the William Penn Foundation as our fairy godmother. What an incredible resource they have been for this work. We were able to work with Opinion Works and do a study in 4 communities. Daniel, do you want to describe the study?
Sure. Yeah. So you're seeing on the screen 4 different communities, cities and neighborhoods in the Circuit Trails region that through this study, there was a number of processes that we worked, together with stakeholders, community leaders, to help shape that process, and really try to figure out, ways that we could engage with people that were already on the trail in these communities, outside of that trail, maybe not using the trail. So figuring out, through mail, email, things online, and then focus groups that actually brought out more of the narrative story that's really hard to figure out through just a binary yes or no questionnaire, but really give more of a safe space that allowed people to be free and open about how do they feel about the outdoors in general, their community, as well as these specific spaces that all of these trails are built, but we were trying to figure out if they're actually being used by a user group that's reflective of who lives near those trails. And in a lot of cases, that wasn't the case. And we were trying to figure out what are those barriers, and then what are the motivators, in order to help make all of these trails, feel open and owned, locally by the communities that live there, and free to use them.
Awesome. Well, you guys answered a lot of questions in that one with how you guys are working towards that goal. And it kind of springs into my next question, and possibly the next thing that you guys will be diving into a little bit was, this community involvement in planning these trails and planning how to make these trails more equitable and diverse and inclusive is so, so important. So what are some of the ways that, you're not only listening to the community, but trying to implement some of the feedback that you guys got on this survey?
Eleanor, do you want me to jump, or are
Yeah, go
you?
ahead. Go.
Sure. Yeah, so there's, as with any given trail, there's so many people involved, and there's so many groups that are involved already in community work, because trails are much more than just a space to walk or bike or sit down and relax. But I think Eleanor was kind of speaking to this, is that they have a social aspect to them. They're meeting places, they're gathering spots, they're places for celebration, for reflection, introspection. So it touches on a lot of different parts of a neighborhood's development. And so working with those civic groups, neighborhood associations, workforce development programs, people that you might not typically think of in the trail world, but are very instrumental to the health of a community. Engaging with those groups, for example, in Southwest Philadelphia in the Cobbs Creek neighborhood, there's been a working group that has been meeting about every month for the last 3 or even more years, and that is just the beginning. It takes a very long time to build these really deep and sincere relationships where people can actually trust each other, and can learn from each other and listen. And that's been part of that effort in Cobbs Creek. And when this study came out, a lot of that effort was actually mirrored in the study's results. And some of it was what we were doing, trying to create programs that were led and drawn up by the folks living there. And we were trying to support that in any way we could. And so there was, an event thrown on the trail. We tried to have more walks, more, nature exploration, more events, programming for kids, things that might not be satisfied by a typical Circuit Trails bike ride that is 20 miles or something like that. Wasn't appealing to a lot of the neighbors we were hearing from. So we wanted to make sure that, those programs were there, as well as the people that are living in the community that have advocated for these things for so long, that they're leading the way. They're the faces you see on the trail when you arrive, so that you can continue to build those relationships, but out in that space.
A trail can be an incredible community asset, but only if the people who live near that trail can see their needs and interests reflected in not only the design of the trail, but the design of programming as well. And without that kind of engagement, they're not going to be owners of the trail, they're not going to be supporters of the trail, and they're not going to be users of the trail. In the study that was done by opinion works, we found that there were a number of things that we could do. We, as trail managers, trail planners, trail advocates, could do to make the trails more appealing to the people who live close to them. And some of the recommended actions are what we call low-hanging fruit. They're easy to implement. Some of the recommendations will take a little more time and resource, but we've divided the 10 recommendations into 5 major categories. The first is welcoming programming. And these recommendations apply to trails that have already been built, but they should be considered when you are thinking about building a trail, when you're using the inclusionary trail network. So among the recommendations are to create welcoming programming. That doesn't mean programming that we think that the people who live near the trails would want. It has to be what they tell us that they want and will use. And so part of welcoming programming is that we should invite people to have fun on the trail. One of the things that we learned from the study is that people said, you know, when you look at pictures of people on the trail, not only do they not look like us, but they don't look like they're having very much fun. They look like it's hard work, it's exertion. You know, we want to have fun on the trail. And so something as simple as having people smiling when they're engaged on the trail is helpful. The second thing in welcoming is that we cannot assume that people feel welcome because the trail is in their community. We need to be active in extending a welcome. We need to invite people to come out and to use the trail. Invite them to take ownership of the trail. And part of the way that we can do that is by hosting organized group activities that we organize in collaboration with groups that are respected and known in those communities. Daniel, do you want to take it from here?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, there's so much that goes into each one of these. So again, we recommend, if you're in the chat and you can see the links, but you can also Google equity of access to trails, circuit trails. I think you should be able to find it. Also, the William Penn Foundation has it on their website, and we can send those links too. But yeah, you want to get people to the trail. You want to welcome them there. You want to make sure that they feel safe. Safety was the issue that came up the most. And again, that requires listening to the folks that live there of what those factors are that make them feel safe. You know, what kind of presence of security is there? We did hear from folks that having police was not always a welcoming, encourager of safety, as well as, if you're going to a neighborhood that you're not from, how do you feel about people looking at you? Are you feeling like an outsider, or are there measures that are there to help you feel like, oh no, like everyone's welcome to come here, whether you live here or you're passing through, or if it's your first time visiting there. And then, having those places, again, not necessarily for racing through there on a bike or running on your jog, but if you wanted to gather and actually stay for a while, that was what we were finding in the results. The participants were talking often about, a place to gather, place to hang out with friends, having signage that lets you know what's around you, interpreting what types of trees, what types of birds, how to get to, a local restaurant to grab a bite to eat. And then the maintenance, I think, can't be said enough. All of these things, because maybe they were built at the time the trail was built and now have deteriorated. If you don't keep that up over time, then it will feel unwelcoming. And then, of course, making sure that oasis is truly there, that a trail feels like a trail and not, a strip of pavement next to a parking lot, next to a blank facade of a wall, but you're actually surrounded by something that makes you feel like you're outdoors, engaging with the ecology around you. And then, that social aspect of showing people enjoying it. and making sure that it's based on all the ways you can reach people both online and door to door. So again, go to the report. There's tons of ways to process it. We've got the full report that actually has the transcripts of those focus groups, and that, both of us, Eleanor and I, have kind of talked about this in different presentations, and that's usually the one that we want people to go to the most, because those are the actual conversations that resulted in these results. That was what was backing it up, and it's actually the voices of the participants, the residents that live in those focus communities, and their own words in those focus groups, talking about what gets them excited about these types of spaces. And then there's lots of shorter versions and slide decks that you could use, and even reach out to us as we want to help you present this information maybe to your own groups as well.
Yeah. One of the things that we learned from the work with Opinion Works is how important it is not just to rely on surveys, questionnaires, but to actually talk to the people that you want to reach. Hearing the voices of the people, what they wanted, what they considered important, what they were concerned about, gave us insights that we could not possibly have gotten if all we had was a bunch of crosstabs from surveys. And you don't have to always do a formal study, although we would recommend doing that from time to time, but simply sitting down talking to the people you want to attract to your trails can provide so much useful information. And when people feel that they are heard, they are more likely to take ownership in the trails, so that they share responsibility for creating programming, for maintaining the trail, and even for publicizing the incredible asset that a trail can be.
All right. That was a lot, but that was a good amount about how people can go from social listening and survey to action and implementation, and a lot of ways that people hear that want to glean information and take it back to their community and try to implement more inclusive outdoor culture there along the Greenway in their local area. Like, they're giving you the blueprint for free. This is completely free, guys. This is a great time on a Tuesday afternoon. You're just hanging out with two cool people who have done the work and are here to share it with you. So I think that's incredible. And there's so much work to be done right now, and so much work that is ongoing.
Angela,
yes.
Angela, if I could correct one thing,
Yeah.
Daniel and I haven't done the work. We are doing the work. We are learning just like so many in this audience are learning. And we don't have all of the answers. And we're not going to get it all right. We're going to make mistakes. We're all going to make mistakes. But what Daniel and I have in common with the members of the Jedi Task Force of Circuit Trails is that we really want to make a difference. We want to be able to look back in a year or two and see more people of color on the trails, more young people, more older people, more people who do not speak English as a first language. So this is a work in progress. We don't want anyone to think that we have all of the answers and that we've solved all of the problems.
Yeah. Thank you for that correction. It reminds me of something that I heard somebody say, where it's like, I may not be the first and I may not be the best, but I can care the most.
Yes.
And even though I may make mistakes, at least I know it's coming from a place of care and intention. And that's what it sounds like to me. I don't know about you guys listening. I'm sure you guys have a lot of questions for these guys. So I'm going to get out of your way. I do have one more question for you guys that hopefully you can answer. With so many partner organizations, community involvement, and ongoing projects on trail infrastructure development, 2022 is said to be a very busy year for the Greenway. What are some exciting things that people can expect to see from Circuit Trails in 2022?
one of the things that I've learned in the 20 years or so I've been involved in trails is that there is such a thing as trail time. And so we tend not to think too much in terms of 1 year. But if you ask me what we expect to see different in the next 1, 2, 3 years on circuit trails, I think that there are about 5 things. And, the first is you can expect to see progress toward our goal of 500 miles of trail by 2025, including what's different, though, is that we're going to spend a lot of our time and effort creating trail spurs that are connectors between under-resourced communities and circuit trails. A second thing that we're going to hope to see the results of is increased and more stable funding for trails, especially for trails in under-resourced communities. No money, no trail. We're working on increased awareness of the Circuit Trails Network. We're working on increased diversity of users of circuit trails, as we've talked about. And one of the things that I think you will see fairly soon is that we're going to work hard to form some new sustainable partnerships with organizations and individuals who are in the communities that we want to see increased trail usage in. And one of the reasons that we want those partnerships is not just to increase help, not just to have them help us increase trail usage, but to learn from them so that we can develop more effective programs and strategies that will not only increase diversity of trail use, but trail use in general. A trail is no good if people don't use it.
You covered so much. I will say, for one of the focus communities, at least, there is a trail that should be opening portions along the Cobbs Creek in Southwest Philadelphia. There's going to be a crossing of a very dangerous arterial road, a really wide highway-like road in Southwest Philly that will get folks safely across. We'll have safety improvements at the intersection. This is 84th and Lindbergh for folks in the Philly area to get down to the John Hines National Wildlife Refuge. So this will be connecting along the border. So Delaware County as well, outside of Philadelphia, will have access to Cobbs Creek Trail down to the Hines Refuge, which has a beautiful many miles of trail, walking paths and bike trails to see all the wildlife out there. And so complementing all of those incredible partnerships and just the internal work that we need to do with the circuit, there will be new celebrated miles of trail, new ribbon cuttings to invite everybody out to, and to figure out new activities to use to celebrate all of those new spaces and connections. This is one of those activities.
Just wanted to leave people with a positive note of what the start of success looks like. A lot of different activities, a lot of different groups of people, as Eleanor was touching on, old, young, everybody, diverse people. Everybody should feel welcome on the Greenway. And that's what good people at Circuit Trails, Eleanor, East Coast Greenway, what we're all working towards collectively. So thank you for joining us, Eleanor Horne. I do want to open it up to questions. Oh God, okay. Charlie from YouTube, he says, "Woo, go Greenway." Clearly you guys like hearing me yell on here. Thank you, Charlie. Debbie West, this very nice person who I've never met on YouTube, says, "These are so helpful." I think she was referring to the slides and the 10 suggestions on how people can make the Greenway more inclusive. So thank you, Debbie. Steve, retired and cycling on YouTube, says, "Thank you for your hard work in this program. Everyone needs to feel welcome on the trails." Thank you, Steve. I really appreciate it. So with that being said, I think that's all that we have for you guys today. Eleanor and Daniel, thank you so much for joining us. And thank everybody for watching, for tuning in and seeing what work is being done currently, what work will continue to be done moving forward. And if you're wondering how you can help impact some of this work, donating to the Greenway and donating to grow the Greenway is one really, really great way to do that. And we really appreciate everybody who has donated so far and who's going to help us close out strong in 2021. And of course, you see Daniel rocking the Greenway merch. I'm here in an East Coast Greenway t-shirt. Hey, you got to shop the Greenway. You have to do it right. If you're going to show up, you have to show up in the right materials, in the right attire. And we're here to help you do that. You know, we have plenty of stuff. You can give it as a gift. Give the gift of the Greenway this holiday season. Thank you so much, Daniel and Eleanor. And we'll see you guys back here, same space, but not the same time. We'll be back at 5, so a little bit earlier next Tuesday with Daniel again and Lewis, who is our New York, New Jersey regional manager. So we'll see you guys. Thank you, Daniel and Eleanor.
Thank you,
Thank you so
Angela.
much.